So, when did counseling stop being about problem solving? Well, not anymore. Introducing solution-focused counseling with the unlicensed counselor. And now, here's your host, Steve Moak.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Unlicensed Counselor. My name is Steve Moak. I am the Unlicensed Counselor. And as always, so grateful to be here on a beautiful, little too hot, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona day as we roll into October. Yeah, I'll give you a little insider tip from somebody who's lived out in Arizona for 30 plus years. We always get like a fake out, right, on the weather. We get where it cools down. It went to like 70, 80 degrees last weekend. It's a fake out, and then it shoots back up to like 95, and it always happens one more time. We get a little heat up, and then it goes away. So just so you know, we just had our fake out. Now we're getting ready for the heat up, and then it goes away. Always right about Halloween time, just in time to put on a hot costume and sweat it out for one more night. But as always, you don't tune into the Unlicensed Counselor for a weather update from Scottsdale, Arizona. We got a fun little topic to dig into today. We don't always talk a lot of politics, although it does weave its way into anything because, God, it's in the lifeblood of the country in almost everything that we do these days. But you know what? We're T-minus 2 weeks out from the election here, and if you're anything like me, let's just get it over with, right? You vote for who you vote for. I'm going to vote for who I'm voting for. Let's just get this thing over with. It goes on too long. There's too much money wasted on all these ads. Let's just vote and get this done with. And by the way, let's just make it a national holiday. You go in, you vote in person. We find out who the next president is that day. Wouldn't that be a nice little thing to have happen, right? You know, just you actually vote and find out, none of this weeks and stretching out, and then we start to get all these conspiracy theories. Like, come on. But that's not the topic. The topic is why political polarization is dividing the country, right? I mean, I was just talking to one of the producers before the show, and he's like, I've heard people getting divorced because they support this person supports that person. You're watching this channel, I'm watching this channel. And all of a sudden, the marriage isn't viable because we have different political opinions. I mean, that's the extreme to which we have gotten, at least in this country. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but it's somewhat sad. I remember a time where you used to just vote for the candidate. A lot of times, you didn't even tell people who you were voting for, right? You went into the little booth, you pulled the lever, marked the marks, pulled the little curtain back, left, dropped it in the box, and then we found out later that day who won for the president, and life went on, right? Sometimes it was a Republican, sometimes a Democrat, but we didn't hate the other person because of that, right? Simpler times, right? So anyways, I want to dig into why this is happening, how it's impacting us mentally, friendships, relationships. I want to touch on kind of the role of the news media in this. I want to talk about some of the deception I've seen from both sides of the aisle here. And then let's kind of wrap it with how we reduce the polarization in this and hopefully improve our mental health and relationships as well, too. Because honestly, you know, we see people on the extremes on each side, and it's like, look, I should be able to still be friends, let alone married to people who have some different beliefs and not have to label them extremists and things like that. So anyways, it's a timely topic. And let's dig into it a little bit more because, man, it's pretty extreme and radical out there in the world today. But before we do that, I want to start off the show by saying thank you to our friends over at Buzzbin Media. This is a cool program that pays you money. Do I need to even say what the service is? What it is, it's trash can advertising. Sign up, cost you nothing. Go to Buzzbin Media. That's BUZ1Z, BIN media.com. And they're going to send you out some decals. They're rolling this out, you know, city by city across the country, and they pay you to put basically little stickers, advertisements on the side of your trash can. Really simple, really straightforward. It sends Venmo money directly to your account. That's $10 a month. That's $5 a bin. Need I say any more? Pretty simple. Anyways, go to Buzzbin Media, BUZBIN media.com to sign up. Cost you nothing. Thanks again for sponsoring the show. Next thing I like to talk about is the youth drug abuse prevention work that I do. This is the nonprofit that I co-founded. And go to the stopstartshere.org. I actually just got an email this morning about a new speaking gig. I'm very excited to be able to go out and talk about youth drug abuse prevention. It's really important stuff. Parents, you can download the Parents Prevention Playbook, give you some take-home tips on how to prevent your son or daughter from ever starting, because that's the only way that I've seen. And I've been in this behavioral health world for a very long time, forever having your kid the best way to have them ever never start. You know what I'm saying. I think I botched that a little bit, but it is what it is, right? Just go to the website, thestopstartshere.org. You'll figure it out for yourself. And last but not least, follow me. Download the podcast, subscribe, like, go to YouTube. We picked up a couple new subscribers this week. Yes, I do check every single week to see how we're doing. It's just a great way to find more content from the show in case you don't get to download and listen to the whole episode. Again, we try and keep it around 30 minutes, except for the interviews. I'd like to give you take-home value on important topics that you can put into play in your life there. Follow the Unlicensed Counselor, download it, or find us wherever you find finer podcasts as well, too, right? Okay, back to the topic at hand. You know, politics is fun. You're always going to piss off somebody with no matter what you say. And candidly, I don't really care. You know, I'm not out here to talk about my political beliefs, but I am here to talk about the things that impact our mental health. That's a lot of what the Unlicensed Counselor podcast is about. So this polarization from a political standpoint is so rapid. I mean, it's like I can judge somebody by what you watch, by comments that you make, the type of clothes that you wear. Do you have a flag in your front yard? It's like I know immediately what party you fall into. And that's just sad. It's just sad that we've evolved to this place that I have to put you in a box right away because of these things that I see about you. I don't know you. Maybe we agree on some things and probably agree on more things than others. But we immediately throw these labels on, and it's just creating this massive divide. And I want to dig into why that is. So, you know, the number one thing I had on my list on why political polarization is dividing a country is this ideological echo chamber, right? So that we got social media, we got news, and it's encouraging people to engage with primary like-minded individuals that reinforce their beliefs and increasing distrust of the opposite or opposing viewpoints. So you just get separated into these buckets, and then you just keep listening to more and more of the same thing, and it's like you're never able to actually kind of hear the other person's point of view or what they're about or what they believe, because you've just immediately thrown them into one of these boxes because of how you perceive them to believe, or because they vote for this candidate or that candidate or associate with this. And that's just an unhealthy way to go about doing this, and it leads to that divide. Right? I want us to be a little less divided if we can ultimately get there. Look, I don't think that, you know, if you're an extremist on right or left, that this podcast is going to make a difference. But if we can find some people who, what I would call just normal Republicans and normal Democrats, and can relate that we actually have more in common, and we like our families, we like our faith, we like our friends, our kids' sports, we like to go out to dinner, we focus on that stuff, I think we're going to come together a little bit more than continuing to head out to these fringes. The other thing that comes up in this kind of divide is it's this us versus them mentality that I think that we've all adopted. And I don't think we meant to adopt it, but it's just kind of gradually happened over time. So these political identities are increasingly tied to our personal values and our morality. And it's making political disagreement feel more like a personal attack than whatever it has been in the past. You know, again, one of my best friends is a lobbyist for a Democrat, a great guy. I mean, we don't agree on everything, but we certainly don't attack each other. In fact, more than anything, we make fun of each other, truthfully, about, oh, you follow this person or you follow that person and some of those policies, and we're able to bust each other's balls a little bit more. It's not like I feel when he says something making fun of that it's a personal attack on my value and everything like that. I'm able to separate these politicians, and candidly, I also understand that they're just saying things that they have to say to win. So for me to then attach to some phony baloney speech on both sides is like, really? You can't see through that they're just going to say whatever they have to do to get elected? And I'm not adopting that as like a personal value because they espouse it. So I don't know, this us versus them mentality I think is really kind of pushing people further and further to each of their respective corners and really continuing to create this divide. I think what also is happening is that we're seeing a decline in kind of civil discourse. You know, we used to say agree but disagree or respectfully disagree. In these polarized environments, we're really fostering more hostility now than any time I've ever seen. I'm 45 years old. Where respectful conversations are replaced by these confrontational debates. And I think social media, and we'll touch on social media and the news here in a little bit, we live in a soundbite world. We live in a soundbite, a TikTok clip, an Instagram reel, a Facebook post, and it just feeds into this. So people get more eyeballs on these controversial things. So it actually goes against us becoming more united because we can create the divide and get more eyeballs. Right? People are going to be looking at more of this when it's more of a heated debate. I was just watching a Turning Point USA clip before this that showed up on my feed. It was yesterday on UC something campus. One of the kids comes over and pours some type of soup or tomato paste or something all over all over the Turning Point people. And I'm just like, this, and it's getting tons of views, right? And I'm just like, this is what we do now. We can't just have, a conversation around this. We have to go dump something on someone and put them down. It's like, oh my God. And that's happening daily. I mean, those things are happening daily. Feels like it happens a little bit more on one side than the other, but I'll leave that open to your interpretation. I won't speak to that because I'm sure it happens on both sides, but one side certainly seems a little angrier than the other, right? And then the other thing that's happening too is there's a politicalization of every single issue that's out there in the world, right? Something happens, an event, a tragic event, a school shooting, a natural disaster, and immediately gets thrown into this political blender and whipped up and stirred, and everybody's got to take an angle and why you did this good or why I did that wrong or whatever. So issues that could be discussed and should be discussed pragmatically, right, such as public health or education, again, natural disasters and things, they're reframed through this partisan lens now that is now creating divides on simple things where we should be able to get together and make some reasonable, rational discussions and logical choices, maybe like boys and girls and sports and genders and things like that, right? There seems to be a reasonable way to do this. It's exhausting. I mean, even when I was doing show prep for this, I'm like, I know it's going to rattle some people, but I mean, I'm just sick of everybody being used by news and social media to kind of drive people further and further away. And you hear conversations around, would it be better if we just had, separate states and separate countries or a civil war or something? It's like, no. This is stupid. We just need to be able to find a way to start coming back together than running further and further away from each other, right? And again, news and social media, which I'll touch on, are going to play a massive role in that. And again, why political polarization is dividing the country. Politicians and the media benefit from this decision, right? This division. So the politicians use fear and outrage to kind of energize their base. And then you got the media and social media over here gaining ratings by focusing on conflict and controversy. It's working against our own interests as a country and as individuals and as people and as friends and things like that. So that's why I'm saying we've got to be able to parse some of this out, the information that we're seeing a little bit better, and not get so whipped up into it, because the people that are pushing this are the ones gaining financially from this. And I do think the tide on that is turning a little bit. I think it kind of reached a boiling point over the last couple of years where everything and everyone was racist and sexist and misogynistic and all these other things. And I think that we hit the tipping point. And I feel like things are starting to swing back a little bit, and people are starting to see through some of this division as well, too. I hope that's the case. We'll see. We got a whole election to get through, and, who knows what's going to happen once that happens, no matter who wins, right? No matter who wins. So, again, the Unlicensed Counselor show is really about kind of mental health, behavioral health, interviewing people, take-home value, bite-sized pieces of information. So how does this polarization affect your mental health? How does it affect your relationships? How does it affect your friendships? I'm sure we're all going through this, and I just had to hit snooze on a buddy of mine from college yesterday, and thank God, actually, like Facebook has this. It's like you don't want to unfriend somebody, but I'm sick of this post. Like, dude, I don't post any of that garbage. Like, I don't care if it was one of my super right-leaning friends. This happened to be a super left, and it's like snooze for 30 days. I was like, oh, perfect. Like, bye. Bye. We'll snooze that for a little while. But, which, by the way, there's a great little nugget just to be able to do. If you're just sick and tired of hearing it, you don't even have to unfriend them and go through the drama that can come from that. Just hit the snooze. I thought that was it's not something I usually do, but it's just there's so much getting pumped out now, right, on social media and all this stuff. I'm like, ugh, just exhausted. Go away. Go away. We'll revisit this when you want to talk about football here in like a month or something like that. But I'm just drained right now. So anyways, back to the mental health part of this thing. So obviously, you're going to see some increased stress and anxiety. So this constant political tension leaves many people feeling anxious and overwhelmed. I'll even take it a step further. I just get frustrated. I get exhausted. I'm just tired of it. I don't care who you vote for. I don't prefer one candidate. I like the other, but I'm not going to sit here and spin my wheels, time, effort, and energy. I got a daughter. I got work. I got money. I got things that I've got to go get done. And I'm just sick of all of this, and it's just drawn out. But really, it does spin up a lot of anxiety in people, and it leaves us overwhelmed and anxious. And that's not a healthy place for us as a country to be. I mean, we're already on enough prescribed meds in this country as well. We don't need to be ramping that up with all of these, all these news stories and things that are coming out every single day about this candidate or the other candidate. Right? The other thing is the damage to personal relationships as well, too. So friends and family members may cut ties over political disagreements, creating emotional strain and loneliness. That's what I was saying really at the top of the show. I was talking to one of the producers before, and it's like there's marriages that have now gone away because they like this candidate and not the other candidate. I don't know if that's ever been a thing at any point in time in kind of this country's history where we are so on edge over this and are so tied to these people, these politicians who are just going to say what they have to say to get your vote anyways. I mean, and that's just the truth of the matter. So don't let this damage all of these relationships. Don't go, we got, Thanksgiving about a month out from now? Let's not walk into that table, no matter who wins the election, and either touting your chest, puffing your chest out, or ready to pick a fight with somebody because this person won or that person won. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. It's detrimental to your health. Truthfully, it is. And again, this echo chamber effect that I kind of mentioned previously as well, too. People increasingly isolate themselves within the communities that reinforce their existing beliefs. So limited exposure to diverse perspectives. You get into this camp or that camp, and now when you get deep into it, and again, in the algorithms, by the way, on social media don't help with this as well. When you start to get over into this, you're going to get pumped more of that content because you've liked it, you're viewing it, you're watching those things longer, and they read all that, and they continue to feed more and more of that. So, you're getting isolated within these communities, what kind of pushes you away from ever kind of hearing what may be going on this other side that may have some value and thoughts and things as well, too. I didn't know a lot about Robert Kennedy, or Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK, and he's an interesting person, but I at least took the time to listen to him, and then lo and behold, he kind of comes over to this other side. So, in a world, when would a Kennedy kind of become a Republican? So it's like, wow, if these people are even taking the time to do it at that level, maybe we as individuals could take a little bit of time and step out of our echo chamber as well, too. Something to think about. Now, here's something that I personally resonate with a lot on how all of this has impacted me is I mistrust a lot of these institutions that exist now in the world, right? So this polarization has eroded my trust in certain institutions, making it harder for people to feel secure about societal structures and kind of their future. I am not an election denier or anything, but it certainly felt like there was some election stuff going on last time. It's like, it just seemed weird. It seems like we should have a day. We all go vote. We get it, right? COVID. Since when would I have ever not trusted the CDC? Now I'm like, what? CDC? What, they're saying that? The World Health Organization said what? Like, there has been so much thrown at me that has now been proven to be inaccurate, right? That you have to have a certain sense of reservation in some of these things, right? And I've got a couple more examples that we're going to talk about here. I mean, if you would have told me I'd be distrusting the CDC, I mean, these people, disease control, I've seen the movie Outbreak. I want them to help with this. And now I'm just like, I don't know. Vaccines? Wait a second. Hold on. What are we giving my daughter? Like, I'm actually asking questions versus just going along with things now. The food supply is what? It's not that healthy. It's been, there's just a lot, right? There's just a lot there that because of all of this, I now have to be able to parse out my information and kind of go and figure out who my trusted news sources as well are too. And last but not least, I think a lot of this leads to some social media addiction as well, too. So platforms designed to maximize engagement will often promote kind of the sensationalism that deepens kind of this emotional exhaustion, and for me, leads to anger as well, too. You get into these things and you find yourself going down the rabbit hole. We've all done it on YouTube or on Instagram or on TikTok, and it's not healthy. I'm getting fed these things and seeing these things, and it kind of gets you worked up a little bit more. And that's their business. That's how they make money, right? So you are the product, by the way, right? You're just being fed all this. So, that stuff is not healthy. And that polarization, that's definitely going to affect our mental health in general. Now let's shift over a touch into kind of the role of the media and social media. I mean, if you call it news still, right? I mean, I am very particular about where I get my news from. And I take all of my news with a grain of salt and almost have to do my own cross-referencing these days to see. I'll read something and just go, whether it's on a site that I even think I trusted, like, geez, that sounds off or a lot or mutt, and you got to read it a couple different places before you can trust it. But the sensationalism of headlines. So these news outlets, they amplify these divisive stories and presenting them as urgent. Again, they're just trying to get more eyeballs, more to the sponsors. These algorithms, folks, I know we've heard a lot about algorithms over the last 10 years. You probably didn't really know what an algorithm was. But platforms like Facebook and X and Instagram and TikTok, they promote this polarizing content, right? This keeps users engaged for longer. It's that simple. You are the product. Again, if it's free, you are the product, right? I mean, how many times do we have to see this? I mean, what was the one that was a great movie on Facebook and kids and how those algorithms, I wish I would remember that off the top of my head, but it's terrific. You can find that. And then this has been a new one in the last, 8 years since kind of Trump has been in all the headlines, is this selective reporting and spin, right? Misinformation. That was a term that kind of came to be that I don't think ever was 10 years or so ago, right? Now we hear that all the time. So mainstream media and independent outlets selectively highlight stories that align with their political leanings. So that deepens the distrust of these quote-unquote news organizations, right? So how are you supposed to be able to trust these things if they've got a political angle that they're shoving down your throat, right? And they've got sponsors that maybe want you to say this and don't want you to say that. I mean, that's not news anymore. It's being directed by interests, right? I know we're hearing a lot of this kind of talk lately, but this is just serving as your reminder. We're 2 weeks out from election. Let's use our judgment in terms of where you're pulling your information from. And then we've also got the influencer and pundit culture. So personalities on both sides exploit hot-button topics for personal gain, spreading information or misinformation and reinforcing these extreme views oftentimes. Look, we've heard that term so many times. We just have to be a little more critical of all of our news sources, right? All of our news sources. I don't just trust Fox. I don't trust CNN. I look for various pieces of news and information, and then if I can read that story a couple different times and see if I can pull out what's opinion and what's fact, and then kind of make my own judgments from there. That's just how I approach news these days. I use Twitter. I'll use, newspapers. I'll use a lot of different things to kind of see, where, does that sound right? Let's do a little quick Google on that and just get a little bit more. Now, here's some examples of deception that I'm talking about on both sides, right? So let's hit our friends over on the Democrat side. So we all remember Hunter Biden's laptop? That kind of came up. Is that a thing, right? That was a huge thing. It's probably about this time, a couple weeks out before the election 4 years ago, that was supposed to be disinformation, Russian disinformation. We had people sign letters from, FBI and all these officials saying that this was completely, a Russian hit job. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out it was an actual thing, right? So, it doesn't get much more deceptive than that. That could easily be called tampering with or election interference and probably may have swayed some things, right? Now, we've also seen a lot on the border messaging from the Democrats as well, too, having downplayed the severity of the border crisis, right? We live here in Arizona. We see this stuff firsthand, maybe even more so than a lot of our friends across the country. It is a real and ongoing problem, but you get it downplayed from our friends on the Democrat side, right? So just two big glaring examples on kind of the deception from the political parties. Now, on the Republicans, they really ran with this election fraud thing. And I think I said at the top of the show, I don't I don't know what happened there. It's impossible for a person in my position to be able to tell that. They're saying, the Democrats would say that there's some false narratives being promoted around the election fraud claims. Whatever it is, it was iffy and questionable at best. But that was certainly kind of the Republicans kind of pushing potentially some deception that was out there. That's what other people are saying. I'm not sure I agree with that statement. I'm just trying to give both sides of this thing so I don't look completely biased in one way or the other. And then the other thing that, again, some people would say would be this COVID-19 misinformation would be what the Republicans were deceptive about in all of this as well, too. Using these platforms like a Joe Rogan or a podcast to spread this misinformation about vaccine safety and efficacy. I say that, but again, my own personal beliefs are like, well, it kind of proved itself out one way or the other, didn't it? Right? Didn't it? So I do think, quick side note, you got to look at people's track records over time, right? And then we're able to kind of figure out where this trusted kind of news sources should be coming from. Because when you say things into a microphone and people say things into a camera for years and hundreds of times and thousands of times over and over again, and then they're proven false, and then you go, moving on. Well, no, wait a second. That impacts your credibility. Now you're telling me about January 6th or some other, 10 things going down the list that I'm supposed to believe you about? Like, your math doesn't add up. It's called credibility. If you were my son or daughter or my friend and you were lying to me about these things, or just wrong, I won't even say lying, you were just wrong about all these things, the next thing you told me about, I would be suspect about. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. Anywho. Quick, I'll jump back on show topic today. So as we kind of get to the end of the show here, we've hit all this stuff. And I know necessarily isn't a ton of new information. There may be some in there. But hopefully this part is. So how can we reduce the polarization, right? How can we improve our mental health in all these times? How can we improve our relationships through this as well, too? And the first thing is, wouldn't it be nice to promote some real civil discourse as well? Encourage open, respectful conversations with people holding different viewpoints to try and foster some understanding. And by the way, in those conversations, be listening. I've had what were supposed to be civil discourse, and you get into these conversations and you can see the other person's wheels spinning. It's like they're chambering their response back to you for what they're going to say. They're not really listening to understand. They're listening to counterpoint, right? And there's a difference. There's a difference in kind of those listening styles as well. And the next thing I would say is seek out some diverse news sources. Try going to X a little bit. I still call it Twitter, but try going to X, right? Try going to the Daily Wire, and then you can go back to CNN, listen to some of their kind of pundits or talking heads, and then you can go back to Rachel Maddow and listen to her, and just try to kind of put these different folks' opinions next to each other and see if you can, by having a variety of sources, if you can combat some of this confirmation bias that a lot of us have, and hopefully provide you with a little more balanced perspective. I do this in my own world, is go listen to a little bit on the left side and go listen to a little bit on the right side and go, okay, who's got a track record, who's been a little more right, and I'll kind of start to use my judgment to kind of go from there, who I want to listen to. I think we also need to limit social media consumption as well, too. It's just the amount of time that we spend on social media and these exposure to these toxic conversations that we all get in. It's just going to lead to emotionally being burned out, and you kind of get numb, right? You just get numb to everything, and that's not where we want you to be. It really is exhausting when you're just seeing, everybody's a racist, everybody, you just tune out, right? You just tune out. Now, I'd love for us to see a little more focus on the things that we share in our values. So shifting from these partisan differences to shared goals, such as a community, well-being, and economic stability. Where I am seeing this a touch right now is on the food conversation. And I don't know if that's Bobby Kennedy kind of leading the charge, but I am seeing a lot of talk around people just finally stepping back and going, what is going on with the food in America? Why is everybody fat? Why is everybody sick? Why are kids getting sick? Like, I am starting to see that turn. And maybe that can be one of those rallying points, and it can get out of the partisan realm a little bit and go, hey, maybe this is something we can both get behind. I'd love to see that happen a little bit more with education in this country as well, too. But it seems like food and kind of the term poisoning is getting thrown around a lot right now, but that seems to be kind of breaking out of the pack right now, which is good. I am 100% on board, and if we can get somebody who can help, get some of this crap out of our food, I am for it. I'm a dad of a 4-year-old kid. I watch. I was never a label reader, but now it's like, holy crap, what's in this? How much sugar is in this? Like, ugh, that's disgusting. Get rid of it. And now I don't buy certain things, right? And then what about this? What about if we're able to model healthy disagreement as well, too? So we can disagree on things, but we can find a way to do it in a little healthier way, right? Imagine that. So public figures, educators, media personalities should demonstrate how to engage in constructive debate without resorting to insults or personal attacks. I know that doesn't make for great TikTok clips necessarily as much, but wouldn't it be nice to see actual healthy conversations and debates around these things that don't result in name calling, right? We can get to some policy discussions, because that's actually what I care about. I think, funny nicknames or silly nicknames are entertaining, but I care much more about the policies, right? About that you're going to bring to office when you're elected. And then how about this, too? What about if we support local solutions? If we focus on community efforts and community-level things that transcend all this national stuff and all the national politics, and we unify around some local issues and some local solutions as well, too. Instead of worrying about what's going on in D.C., we worry about what's going on in Scottsdale, Arizona right now, or Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, right? Let's start thinking about what's going on in our own backyard. And then last but not least, let's hold our media a little bit more accountable. Demand more balanced reporting and call out sensationalism on both sides, and encouraging a culture of transparency and factual reporting. Factual reporting. Less opinion. There's a place for opinion. In all the newspapers, they had an opinion column, and then the rest was news that was based on facts and reporting and journalism. But we've gotten so damn far away from that. It just seems like everything's just an opinion piece now. So, look, I don't get into the politics thing and all that much. I do find it interesting, and I do follow it rather closely. I don't get caught up. I don't wrap my personality up in this. But I do think it's created such tremendous divide in this country that we've just shut so many people down. And I'd like to see if we can buck that trend and start to find things in common, shared goals, shared values, families, faith, the environment, food, sports, whatever it is, and get back to a little time where we're coming together a little bit more and having some fun disagreements over who's going to win the Super Bowl versus all this heavy stuff that seems to be happening out there in the world today. So anyways, we got 2 weeks left, and then hopefully no more political talk for a while, at least on this show. You can go find it on whatever news source you trust. So anyways, my name is Steve Moak. I am the unlicensed counselor. Till next time, thank you very much.